The Ghost Recon franchise has had a mixed success in recent years. While 2017's Wildlands did sell well in the year it was released, it did not receive unanimous praise from the press or the gaming community. Many felt Wildlands was too repetitive and bland to distinguish itself from the generic open-world formula Ubisoft had forced across all their franchises. Does its 2019 sequel solve these deficiencies? Does Breakpoint rise above its predecessor's shortcomings? No. For every step Breakpoint took forward, it slides 2 steps back. Let's start with first impressions, by which we mean graphics. Admittedly, the game can look very pretty at times. Case in point, the cave that functions as your base can be breathtaking thanks to its lush vegetation and striking lighting. The visuals start to fall apart once you venture outside though. The sky, for instance, can appear flat with blocky clouds that appear to be rendered at a lower resolution. Weather effects fare significantly better. The rain and lightning look and sound very convincing, while the mist does a great job of projecting the damp, humid atmosphere of the game's island setting. That said, the fog is too faint to hide the terrible draw distance. Distant and sometimes not so distant terrain loses all its tessellation and most of the definition on its textures, making the game look 10 years old. You can occasionally see the difference this makes when you zoom in with high-powered scopes. The pop-in can be jarring. There is a silver lining. Enemies are easier to spot on simplified terrain, though this won't seem such a good thing when you're the target. Sadly, draw distance is not a setting you can tweak in the options menu. Even the options that do exist don't work as well as they should. For instance, the game does feature Fidelity FX sharpening and an intensity slider. However, the image still appeared soft even with the sharpening set to 100. I had to use Nvidia's sharpening filter with GeForce Experience to make the game look as crisp as I wanted it to. This is a notable regression from Wildlands, wherein the sharpening filter does not even need to breach 30% for the game to absolutely look too sharp. And that brings us to performance. My 1080 Ti ran Breakpoint at 60 to 70 frames a second at 1440p, which is acceptable but not impressive given the visuals on offer. The performance was inconsistent at times. The cave base presented anywhere from 70 to 40 frames a second, with no perceivable difference in the scene to account for the drop in frame rate. All footage used in this video was recorded with most of the settings set as high as they would go, with the exception of motion blur and bloom. Why did we turn those off? Motion blur by definition hurts visual clarity, while the bloom is blinding and makes it hard to spot targets when aiming out of an enclosed environment. The environments for their part look good enough, as long as you're close enough for draw distance not to be a factor. The same could be said about the character models, which is important since you get to customize your character's appearance when you first start the game. If you choose the male, for instance, you get to choose between 12 faces, 9 eye colors, hair, facial hair color, and scars. The character you create is knocked out a few seconds after you hit confirm, as the helicopter you're riding in crashes into the island. As the sole survivor, you must head inland to investigate who or what killed your crew. Some might initially find the premise more interesting than disrupting cartel activity in Wildlands, but we won't talk about the plot much further to avoid spoiling anything. Instead, we'll talk about how immersive the game is. Let's start with how believable the characters are, which is determined by how they look, sound, and move. By and large, there is a great deal of inconsistency in the attention to detail across the game's set of characters. Some characters look more realistic than others. Some characters sound way better than others.
Damn. Everything that happened here is because of that prick.
Oh, I was wrong. I thought you and your friends wanted to be left alone. It's nice to finally meet you.
Though none of them are quite as bad as the flat, monotonous voices heard in Wildlands.
Forgive me for asking, but what do you think this is? Compelling? Dramatic?
So nothing matters to you, El Cerebro.
The lip syncing in Breakpoint is serviceable, if mediocre.
They might be able to make something for you. Only thing is, they'll need blueprints for what you need built.
Though the eyes could have been animated better to make speech feel more realistic. Sometimes facial animation is all you have to go by, as the game inexplicably mutes the characters' voices in certain instances. In other cases, the voice lines are straight up missing.
Would you, happen to know where I can find Jay's skull?
I don't remember more.
Thanks, stranger.
This is one of several factors that make the game feel incomplete. Another factor is the conspicuous absence of AI teammates in a game that emphasizes cooperation in a squad. This is what Ubisoft had to say. We're still working on the AI teammate implementation, and we'll have more to share with you later in Year 1. To give you an idea of how long that could take, Ubisoft has divided Year 1 into 3 episodes, the first of which ends in January 2020, the second runs from February 2020 to May 2020, and the third ends in September 2020. Ubisoft didn't specify which episode we could expect AI teammates to be added in, which could be as late as September 2020. You know what's amazing? This isn't even the worst delay of 2019. That dubious award goes to Call of Duty Modern Warfare, where the developers deliberately made one mode exclusive to the PS4 for a whole year, which constitutes the entire life cycle of a Call of Duty title. But that's a topic we'll explore in another video. So please like, subscribe and press the bell button so you don't miss out. YouTube has been remiss in notifying subscribers of new uploads, even if notifications are enabled. So new uploads will also be announced on Twitter, so please follow us over there too. Getting back to Breakpoint, Ubisoft initially announced in May 2019 that the omission of AI teammates was a deliberate decision. There are multiple reasons. Firstly, we offered the option to turn off AI companions in Wildlands, and players really like the full solo experience. Secondly, with the story here, in Breakpoint, you're stranded alone behind enemy lines, so we really want players to be able to dive into this fantasy. So although admitting that AI teammates is something I'll implement later on in the year 2020, they're palming it off as a gameplay mechanic as to why it's not included now. How is this fantasy of being stranded alone behind enemy lines not dispelled by the ability to see other players in the cave? But we also offer the mechanics so that the game is fully playable in solo and co-op. Those who want to have the solo experience can, and players who want to have the 4-player co-op experience can as well. We just want to offer as much variation as possible. How does co-op not kill the fantasy? How does this not invalidate the story as a reason to omit AI teammates? Thankfully, Ubisoft seems to have changed their stance going by their work on implementing AI teammates, though it is still unclear how long they will take to ship the feature. In the meantime, players must contend with queuing for co-op if they don't want to play solo. Either way, they will need a persistent internet connection to Ubisoft servers even if they're playing solo. To be fair, some may argue buyers know what they're getting into, since Ubisoft did announce this requirement months before release. But their announcement was a tad misleading. As I said, Breakpoint will require an active internet connection like The Division and Rainbow Six Siege. Those two examples represent the opposite ends of the spectrum. The Division will cease functioning when it cannot connect to the developer's servers, while Rainbow Six Siege's single-player and multiplayer modes can be played offline via LAN. Siege requires a connection only if you're playing its PvE mode, Terrorist Hunt, which can be played solo or in co-op. While the requirement could be justified for co-op, there's no reason Terrorist Hunt should require an internet connection if you're playing Lone Wolf. Ultimately, this doesn't matter as much as PvE is very much a sideshow in Siege. Ideally, Ubisoft should have used Siege as a template for Breakpoint's connectivity requirements. Breakpoint should have been playable offline with LAN functionality for co-op and PvP. Sadly, Ubisoft went with the Division model, a game that had the MMO label slapped onto it to justify the always-online DRM. What motive could Ubisoft have in imposing this requirement for Breakpoint? Piracy is the usual suspect, as it is the target of always-online DRM. Ubisoft was one of the pioneers of always-online DRM, injecting this requirement across their AAA franchises from 2010 to 2012. They retired the practice after consumer backlash, though they have revived it from time to time, as was the case with The Crew and The Division. Since 2016, Ubisoft has relied on Denuvo to protect its titles from piracy to middling success. Case in point, Breakpoint uses Denuvo, as did its predecessor, Wildlands. While Wildlands wasn't cracked immediately upon release, it did eventually fall to Steampunks and CPY a few months after it launched. Perhaps this is Ubisoft's motivation behind imposing always-online DRM on Breakpoint. However, they didn't need to hold the single-player hostage to provide incentives to purchase the game. Case in point, there are still a few incentives to buy Wildlands, even though you can download a cracked copy for free. While its single-player has been cracked, pirates cannot play co-op or multiplayer, which comprise a good deal of the game's content. This would have been the case with Breakpoint if it didn't require a persistent connection. The release of a crack would have provided pirates a taste of the gameplay, while the potential of playing with other people would have provided an incentive to buy the game. Case in point, 50 million players have purchased Rainbow Six Siege, despite the fact that most of its content can be pirated for free. While we're on the subject, Rainbow Six Siege may harbour clues to another, more sinister reason behind Ubisoft requiring a persistent connection for Breakpoint. In 2017, Ubisoft banned several players who had used Siege's single-player campaign to farm its grind currency. This exploit had no impact on other players, so why did Ubisoft punish them? By shortcutting the grind, these players had saved time without paying Ubisoft for the privilege. They skipped the grind without purchasing the pass or premium currency, effectively circumventing the microtransactions which comprise the majority of Ubisoft's post-launch monetization. Because of Siege's offline functionality, the punished players will still be able to play the single-player and multiplayer if they can find a LAN emulator. This may be what Ubisoft is trying to prevent by crippling Breakpoint with always-online DRM. Any Breakpoint buyer that tries to skip the grind risks being banned from Ubisoft servers. If the player cannot connect to the servers, they cannot play the game even in single-player. If you think the Rainbow Six Siege ban wave is an isolated case that shouldn't be extrapolated to other Ubisoft titles, let's look at another case. Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Story Creator Mode was designed to be a tool for players to let their creativity and imagination run free as they build their own stories to share with others, using a modified version of the tools our own designers used to develop the quests in the game. However, since the launch of the beta, we have noticed an increasing flow of farming quests. These farming quests exploit the tool to get large amounts of XP. These exploits risk jeopardizing the overall quality, integrity, and purpose of microtransactions? No? That's not what you said. These exploits risk jeopardizing the overall quality, integrity, and purpose of Story Creator Mode, and results in less visibility for the creative, interesting, and frankly fantastic community stories that have been published. We are also changing Story Creator Mode's terms of use to prevent creators from publishing these kinds of stories. We are working on the following fixes and adjustments to reduce the impact of such farming quests on the player experience, shifting the focus back to the tool's intended design and use, as well as actively combating exploits moving forward. Stories that are reported for exploitation or cheating will be hidden moving forward. Our terms of use will be updated to reflect the misuse of the tool. We will be sanctioning those who continue to willingly and intentionally misuse the tool. This is the second example of Ubisoft punishing players for skipping the grind without buying their time-saver microtransactions. Since Assassin's Creed Odyssey is a single-player game, they cannot paint their targets as cheaters who ruin other players' experience. There is no other explanation for Ubisoft's sanctions other than to prevent the circumvention of their post-launch monetization. The offline functionality of Assassin's Creed Odyssey gives the sanctioned players some ability to access their product they paid for. This is what Ubisoft is trying to remove with Breakpoint's always-online DRM. The persistent connection requirements will give them unprecedented power to enforce their restrictions. They will have the ability to remove all access to the game's multiplayer and single-player whenever they want, to whomever they want. All they need to do is ban the player from accessing their server. If the precedent set by Siege and Odyssey is anything to go by, Ubisoft will do this to anyone who tries to sidestep the progression and microtransaction system. Speaking of which, what are Breakpoint's microtransactions like? Like Rainbow Six Siege, Breakpoint features two types of currencies. Skill credits is Breakpoint's grind currency, what you get by completing missions and multiplayer matches. Skill credits can be spent on crafting and purchasing weapons, attachments, gear, and vehicles. Ghost coins is Breakpoint's premium currency and must be purchased with real-world money. Ghost coins can be exchanged for grind currency, though I don't know why I'd want to when you can spend those coins on exclusive customization options, unlocking weapon blueprints and attachments automatically. While Ubisoft insists you can find these in-game for free, selling instant access for money just gives them an incentive to make them harder to find in-game. It gets worse, as the premium currency can be spent on exclusive vehicles and time savers. That doesn't sound good, but it's becoming routine for Ubisoft titles. In Breakpoint's case, Ubisoft states time savers compromise materials to craft explosives and medical items, as well as boosters to unlock rewards faster. Usually this is something you can get for free using a third-party trainer. However, the intolerance Ubisoft has demonstrated towards these techniques makes this a risky proposition. Doubly so considering the game's always online DRM enables Ubisoft to remove your access to the game at any time, for any reason, or for no reason at all. This works well at deterring players from circumventing the grind. But how can Ubisoft push players to purchase their time savers? By maximising the time saved. In other words, by inflating the grind. This is why the mere presence of time savers is a problem. This is yet another example of why the integration of progression and monetization is a disaster for consumers. Thankfully, the community seems to be waking up to this, as the outcry over Breakpoint's monetization forced Ubisoft to remove the microtransactions, though this does seem to be a temporary measure. This is what Ubisoft said to PCGN on the matter. We are aware that during the early access of Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Breakpoint on October 1st, some time-saver items, skill point bundles, XP boosters, and parts bundles for advanced weapon upgrades were available for purchase for a few hours in our store. But this was not our intention and was an error on our behalf. These items were designed as an optional way for players arriving later to the game, post-launch, to catch up with those who have already been playing for longer and enjoy our co-op and challenging in-game experiences. These time savers have since been removed from our store for now. This seems to be a trend with developers. During a game's pre-release beta season, they release some monetization items in their store, gauge people's response and feedback, then remove them from the store and adapt accordingly. This could mean altering the type of monetizations available, but most definitely means altering the price. The less backlash they receive, the less they lower the price. This does not apply to the second type of monetization in Breakpoint, Ubisoft's standard year pass. The Year 1 pass instantly unlocks the 3 new classes and grants 1 week of early access classes. What's that? Classes are Breakpoint's counterpart to Wildlands characters, and this replacement is designed to reduce the disconnect between PvE and PvP. Breakpoint features 4 classes at launch, and each class has a unique item and ability. The field medic can revive himself and allies faster, as well as deploy a medkit which heals injuries and grants extra health. The assault class has extra health, and can lob a gas grenade which damages enemies in its area of effect. The assault can activate True Grit, which reduces recoil and incoming damage for a short while. The Panther class can disappear behind a smoke screen, and use a cloaking spray to become undetectable by drones. Its passive bonuses grant faster movement speed and remove the damage penalty incurred by suppressing handguns and submachine guns. The Sharpshooter class can load high-penetration rounds that travel faster and deal more damage. They also get access to the sensor launcher, which marks enemies in a large area, as well as passive bonuses that enable longer breath control while aiming. You can upgrade these classes by completing challenges like healing teammates or killing enemies with a designated firearm. These classes are common to PvE and PvP, greatly improving the continuity between single-player and multiplayer. The guns you obtain in the process of playing the campaign are the weapons you will use in multiplayer. The modes share the same progression web, meaning most of the skills and perks you unlock can be used in co-op and PvP. What's the difference between skills and perks? Perks need to be equipped in one of the 3 slots, meaning you can only activate up to 3 perks at any one time. However, this symmetry is hampered by the need for balance, meaning certain PvE mechanics are not ported to PvP. We'll let Ubisoft explain the rest. PvP is meant to offer a level playing field, meaning you can successfully play Ghost War with a low-level character and gear. Gear level is disabled in PvP. Weapons have PvP-specific damage, and caps are put in place to lower the max values of stats coming from gear and weapons. It's telling that Ubisoft recognised gear level would be a problem in PvP, though that just raises the question: why is it in the game at all? What benefit does it bring to Breakpoint? It feels like Ubisoft has crammed as many RPG elements as they can to maximise the game's potential for post-launch monetization. For instance, you can dismantle weapons you don't want for parts that can be used to upgrade the guns you do use. While I'm not opposed to this mechanic, I'd be at a loss for words if you asked me how this makes the game more fun, which could also be about the levels the game assigns to each gun. The only impact gear levels have is to break the already fragile immersion. How does it make sense for a weapon's performance to be dictated not by its caliber or muzzle energy, but by an arbitrary number the game affixes with it? Thankfully, this doesn't matter quite as much when fighting human NPCs, as you can kill them with one headshot. 2 if they're wearing a helmet. This won't work against the armada of armored robots you'll face while completing missions. Speaking of which, let's talk about missions, which can be split into 3 types. Story missions, which are self-explanatory. Side missions, which you start by talking to an NPC. And faction missions, which are the blandest of the lot. Most of their gameplay can be boiled down to these tripe tropes. Go here, kill that. Go to the designated location and press a button. Or go there and kill or destroy the designated target, perhaps rescue a hostage they've been holding and drive them to a designated point. Or go to the designated location, press the designated button and defend the designated object from waves of enemy soldiers until the time runs out. Run through the maze, press a button on the wall and get rewarded with food. On occasion, the game will have you sneak around an enemy base to collect the designated object. Systematically killing enemies from stealth and sprinting their corpses out of sight can be fun the first time you do it, but it can get old after a while. Occasionally you might stumble upon a piece of intel that might unlock a blueprint or fast travel location on a map, which can significantly reduce the time you take to reach the location your mission designates. If you're not in a hurry, you can craft consumables like explosives and rations from the materials you collect on your travels. You can also prepare for battle by eating, hydrating and stretching, which grants your character a temporary buff like additional stamina, accuracy, XP or drone speed or resistance to injury or fatigue. Inexplicably, you can also buy weapons and vehicles. When you're done, you can choose the time of day you want to break camp. While these mechanics are universal in most games, they can't quite save Breakpoint from falling into mediocrity. They don't give the missions the context and narrative they need to feel meaningful. As it stands, many missions feel like generic filler that is so boring that even the "it's fun with friends" is disputable. The PvP fares a bit better, thanks to the thrill that's inherent in competing against other people. Breakpoint's Ghost War retains many of Wildlands' mechanics, though a few of them have been tweaked in the move from character to classes. Some of these changes are nominal. Wildlands' Recon Tower is identical to Breakpoint's surveillance system in all but name. It functions exactly the same. You use it to reveal the enemy's location, though activating it locks you into an animation during which you are vulnerable to enemy gunfire, which is almost certainly coming your way considering enemies are always warned when you start the process. Moving on to our second example, you can still use drones to scout for enemies and place a temporary marker above their heads, though in Breakpoint you do not begin with one and will need to find drones that are scattered across the map. Adrenaline is easier to access, as you can pick up consumable shots off the ground and use them when you need. Like Wildlands, Adrenaline Rush is still triggered when you're the only survivor on your team, though it no longer provides unlimited stamina or health regeneration. You'll need to collect and consume a syringe if you want to heal your injuries. Adrenaline still helps you revive your teammates faster, and you will take less damage while it's active, which can prove useful if you make a rush for it. There are only 2 scenarios that'll make you want to do this: if you're the sole survivor, and towards the end of the match. Why? The combat zone shrinks in stages before the round comes to a close. I guess Ubisoft learned from Wildlands and didn't want to let players hide from the enemy and force a draw by waiting for the round to run out of time. Their solution works a treat. The shrinking circle forces the 2 teams together, guaranteeing confrontation before the match times out. Personally, I hope Ubisoft experiments with adding more squads into the mix. 4v4v4 at the very least. This would help the map feel more populated and increase the frequency of action. As it stands, it can take a while for an enemy to come into range. But when that happens, firefights can be as frantic as they are in Wildlands. There's nothing special about how the guns look, sound and handle.
Enemies down. Target. I'm healing up. Target down. Enemies down. Good kill.
But the semi-permanence of death can make for some intense moments. So, is this worth the asking price? Absolutely not. Ubisoft has given you very few reasons to buy Breakpoint, and far too many reasons not to. To start, the game is buried under layers and layers of DRM, de novo, and always online. There is no point in pretending pirates are the only ones affected by this. Legitimate buyers have already been affected by this, and they've been kicked back to the menu because their game lost its connection to the servers. Either because Ubisoft took them down for maintenance, or because of problems with connectivity. There is no excuse for being kicked out of single player because of server issues, but here we are. Even while we were connected, the game would drop us in matches with nobody on the opposing team. In a few of the cases, we were prevented from quitting the match as the game disabled all functions bar text chat, forcing us to close the application altogether. In other cases, the game would do this for us, crashing to desktop randomly for no discernible reason. These problems would be deal breakers individually, but when they coalesce in one product, they outweigh any fun factor the game might have had going for it. Should you buy Breakpoint? Certainly not. Should you subscribe to Uplay to try it? No. However, if you're already subscribed to Uplay Plus for another game, and you grow bored of that game, there's no reason not to play Breakpoint then, if at least to remind you why you shouldn't buy it in the first place. As it stands, Breakpoint is not a game worth spending money on, but it has the potential to be. This game can be salvaged if Ubisoft removes most of the faulty foundations dragging it down. The DRM and microtransactions to be specific. Given their track record though, I'm not holding my breath. And that concludes our analysis of Ghost Recon Breakbank. There is more content like this in the way, so please like, subscribe and press the bell button so you don't miss out. Now, go share and recommend this video, because YouTube doesn't recommend us.